Welcome to Thoughtful Planning, the place where real conversation, expert insight, and a touch of humor meet to turn our end-of-life uncertainties into self-assurance. I'm your co-host, Santiago, a history buff and a big kid at heart.
And I'm Honey, your guide through the intricate dance of planning with care and a whole lot of warmth. Every week, we're here to turn those intimidating "are we ready" moments into confident "everything is under control" moments. Today's journey is one you won't want to miss. Hi, welcome to Thoughtful Planning. I'm Honey.
And I'm Santiago. Before we get too deep into the conversation today, please note, as always, we're not doctors, we're not lawyers. We are just a couple of people on a journey together and wanting to share information with you for educational purposes only. If you have deeper questions, please consult with a qualified professional for decisions that are specific to your situation in life.
All right, so today we're honored to have Dr. Brittany Clayborne and her son Micah with us. Both have undergone heart transplants and are now dedicated advocates for organ donation and support for transplant recipients. Dr. Clayborne and Micah, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. We're honored to be here.
Awesome.
When Honey was telling me about your journey, both of your journeys, I was inspired to provide a little bit of context to our listeners. As of 2022, a little bit ago, there were over 170 million people that have registered to be organ donors. However, due to medical issues matching, there's still more than 100,000 individuals that remain on our national transplant waiting list. And it's estimated that about 17 people die each day as they wait for that special transplant. And that leads us now to our essential question. How can the gift of an organ donation transform someone's life? And what can we do to support those transplant recipients and their family?
All right. So, Dr. Clayborne, when I first heard your story, I was in awe and inspired by you. I believe it was your TEDx that I saw first. So would you please share your story with the listeners?
Sure. So Micah is my only child, and I gave birth to him on September 12th, 2010. He was born at 2 pounds. So he was a little bitty guy. We went to the NICU. A couple of days later, I went home and they told me everything was great. The pregnancy had went well for as far as I went, but he was born on a Sunday. And on that Friday, I went back because I couldn't breathe. After running some tests, they told me that I had about 2 liters of fluid and I'd had a heart attack during labor. So that began my heart failure journey. They diagnosed it as peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is an unexplained weakening of the heart muscle due to pregnancy. They explained to me that most women that are diagnosed with this will recover back to they'll recover from heart failure within 6 to 18, maybe 24 months. By the time the baby's 2, you should be fully recovered was the idea. When Micah was 2, I wasn't fully recovered. I actually was getting worse. And they were actually afraid that I would have a heart attack and die. So when he was 2, I actually had a pacemaker and defibrillator put in. From the time he was 2 until the time he was 6, I died and was defibrillated 6 times. So at that point, they decided, Brittany, we're going to have to move to heart transplant. Man, what a kick in the head, because I was 30, barely 30, when they decided that. And having still a young child at home is not what my plan was. So at one point I got so sick that they had to admit me into the hospital, and they said, we can't let you go home without a new heart. So they admitted me into the hospital in December of 2015, and I waited in the hospital until September of 2016. So I was in the hospital for about 9 months. Wow. And in those 9 months, I obviously could have gone crazy just being away from my son. I was in ICU, so I was basically attached to this bed, but found an online master's degree program. So I started the master's degree when I was admitted in December, and it was a self-paced master's degree. So I was able to wake up and every single day just spend 8 hours hammering away at this master's degree. So by the time we got to September, I was done with the master's degree. Wow. And my son called me. It was about 3 weeks before his birthday. We were supposed to have a Power Rangers birthday party. And he said, are you going to be at my birthday party? And I said, no, baby, mommy's in the hospital. And he said, I don't want to have a birthday party. So immediately I told my doctors, I said, you got to help me get out of here. I can't, because if I don't get a transplant and I die, then I've wasted the last few moments of my life away from him. But if I'm going to die, I'd rather at least be spending time with my child. So they said, we can give you an LVAD, which is like a type of mechanical heart pump. So they gave me an LVAD. So I went home with a mechanical heart, didn't have a pulse. I carried batteries in my backpack, and that attached to a battery pack I carried with me. I had about 4 hours of life on each battery. And that's how I lived for about 2 years. And then, so that was from August 2016. And then in January 2018, I got my heart transplant, and everything was really great, actually. Everything went great with the transplant. Transplant was really good. That was January 2018. And then December 2018, I went in for a checkup, and I was told I had stage 4 cancer. So that began a cancer journey that I won't get into now, but that began that second part of the journey. But that's how my journey started and how I got into this transplant space.
Wow. Okay, I got a question about the class that you took while you were in the hospital. What degree did you earn?
It was a Master's of Industrial Organizational Psychology.
Okay, our son has that degree.
Oh, that's awesome. He's a good guy then.
He is a very good man.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, when did you get your doctorate degree then?
So during my cancer journey, when they told me I had cancer, the doctor's kind of talking, and he's telling me about how much chemo I'll need and how much radiation and just all the logistics. And he said, do you have any questions? And I said, I need the number to a really good psychologist. And he said, just use anybody. We have a whole list. Just use anybody. And I said, no, I actually need someone that specializes in critical illness. And he said, there's not really anybody like that. Just use anybody. And I couldn't even believe that there wasn't someone that specialized in critical illness. And I told my doctor, I said, I don't want someone to say, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. I want someone that can say, I know how you feel. And he said, well, I don't know that there's anybody like that, Brittany. So I went home and did my own research, and he was correct. There wasn't anyone like that. I realized, okay, I'm going to have to go through this health journey again. I'll probably be hospitalized, and I'm going to need something to keep my mind busy. So I found an online Doctor of Psychology program and enrolled in it. So I began my doctoral studies the same day I began chemo.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor myself, and I can't imagine going to school. I did some work while I was sitting at home, but working on a doctorate, I don't think I could have handled that. You're a much stronger person than I.
And as soon as you returned home, we had a party.
Yeah.
That's the stuff he remembers. So there was this party, right?
It was a party. And was it everything you wanted it to be, Micah?
Honestly, no. I thought there would be some fireworks, maybe, but then we just said, welcome home, and we were like, I was like, okay, this is kind of lame. I gotta go start.
He was what? How old were you? 10? No, 9? He had just turned 8. So yeah, that's my journey for me.
Wow.
Wow.
It's incredible.
So, yeah, that's unimaginable, actually. So, Micah, how about you share your story with us?
I started out as a normal junior high student. I was playing tennis at the time and all, like a normal 7th grader, until December of 2023, whenever I went into the hospital. And according to my mother, they had pulled her away and said that I had a 7% ejection fraction. And whenever she told me this whole thing, I was like, okay, let's solve the problem then. No need to freak out over it. That was the thing.
Yeah, so basically he was playing tennis, running a mile or two every day. And he came home one day from school, and I said, let's go outside and play some more. And he said, no, I'm having chest pain. So I said, well, that's strange. So I took him to the doctor. And after the doctor did the echo, he said, Micah's heart's pumping at 7%. We have to take him to surgery immediately and put a pacemaker and defibrillator in. This is the worst case of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy I've ever seen. And that started his journey. So we got him into surgery. He had an ICD placed, and essentially that began his journey. I asked him the same question that I asked myself when I was going through cancer. Is I said, what do you need? How do I support you? And he gave me a couple of answers, but one of the main answers was what?
I asked for social connection because the whole time friends couldn't come up because either they had younger siblings that could go, and if they went, then they would be sad. And if their older siblings went, then they would be sad. But like, I had friends that were underaged, some not, some with siblings that just couldn't come up. Because if one sibling goes, then the whole family has to kind of go along with them. So that's the reason why a lot of people weren't able to come up, and I was sad about that. That's why I wanted a social network.
Yeah, so I said, what do you need? And actually, I'd gone to a caregiver support group. They had in-hospital caregiver support groups for the parents. So they come room to room, and they're like, hey, we got a support group upstairs. So I go to the support group, And I came back and Micah's sitting on the edge of his bed. And I said, where do you think you're going? And he said, what time's my support group? And I said, I don't know that there's one for you. Let me check. So of course I asked the social workers and they said, we have one quarterly for his age group, but we don't have something like we have every week for the parents. And he said, why not? Because I'm the one that's going through the transplant.
From the mouth of babes, right?
Yes, literally from the mouth of babes. So I did some research, reached into my transplant community and asked them, I said, hey, is there a kind of a peer support group for teenagers that are navigating transplant? And they said, no, there's not one. Hospitals may have their own for their teens, but there is not a nationwide peer support group. So I told Micah that, and I was scared to tell him because I was like, man, I hate that for you. And when I told him there's no peer support community for kids your age, what was your answer?
We don't cry about problem, we solve problem.
Exactly. I like that.
I do too. I like that, Micah.
Who's your mom? You're so cool.
It might be Mary. It
Might be Mary.
It might be Mary. It might be Brittany. It might be Ezekiel. Who knows?
Who knows? Okay. All right. I'm going to find her and tell her she's doing a great job. So yeah, he wanted this space. He wanted to see and experience and share his experience with people that were like him, that were his age. I have plenty of friends that are transplant recipients, but they're my age and they're young adults. They're not trying to navigate adolescence and transplant. And that was what he needed. We all remember our adolescent years, and they were hard just as regular adolescent years. So yeah, he specifically wanted this space
where people could thrive, heal, and survive.
Yeah.
Among others like them.
Okay, there you go.
Yep, there we go. But that's really so important, especially at a younger age, to have somebody that you can talk to and relate to and empathize with. That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, because these kids have very unique experiences for their ages, and they do have very unique views on life because they've been almost to that brink of death point. Once we are there, the world looks different when you recover from that. So to have that 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 makes you live and think and move through life very differently. And they share that common understanding of that, but they also will play video games, right? So it's a very interesting
It's just
and
a way to distract our mind.
I love what you guys do. They're a dynamic group of folks. They really are.
That's fantastic.
Micah, when I was looking you up online, I saw that you have Micah Gives and Transplant Teenz. Can you tell us more about those organizations?
Teenz is one that we've been focusing on the most, but Micah Gives is the oldest. It was whenever Mama was still during her cancer, and I decided to make it for adults that were going through the emotional mist of things, whether if it was someone in your household, whether if it was you yourself, or just somebody that was like within your relative social group, basically. And that's what Mike Gives is for. It's for adults.
Well, it's not for adults. It's to give you the backstory on it. So Micah's 10th birthday, and he was born in 2010. So this was 2020, in the middle of COVID. And remember, everybody was doing those honk and wave things for the birthday.
Yeah.
It was weird. And because he had birthday parties before, he had several, but because I was so sick sometimes, they weren't really what they could have been. We celebrated him, obviously, but some days I was neutropenic and couldn't have a lot of people around, or I was in the hospital. So I had promised myself, I said, for his 10th birthday, we're going to go all out. And of course, then COVID hits and we can't go all out. But everybody, remember, during that time, everybody loved getting Amazon packages, right? If you got an Amazon package, you were like, it's Christmas morning. So I made a Amazon wish list, and he was his 10th birthday. So I put 10 things on it. And I said, man, if he can wake up and get 10 gifts on his birthday, that's a good day.
It was not 10 things.
So like he said, it was not 10 things. I sent it out to some friends on Facebook. They shared it. So when we opened the door on his birthday, can you remember how many packages were out there? 73.
Holy smoke.
Wow.
73 packages.
I still have a picture of me just holding them. Like, I was struggling. That's how many things were.
Wow. That's cool.
That's fantastic.
24 gifts in of them opening them. He said, Mom, what is this feeling? And I said, what feeling? And he said, I just feel good. I feel happy. I said, you feel gratitude and you feel hope and you feel connection and you feel love, because everybody had written a little note in their little Amazon package. And he said, okay, I want every kid to feel like this. I want everybody to feel like this. And I said, okay, what do you want to do? He said, can we give things to kids to make them feel like that? If their parents are going through a hard time, or if they're going through a hard time, can we give them something to make them feel what I feel?
That's essentially what happened. But literally, she kept asking me a bunch of questions, and I just kept saying. She kept saying, "Do you want like a company where you can help out other kids?" I said, "Yeah." She did. I didn't say out. I just said, "Yeah."
Yeah, exactly. So we started pitching around ideas, and it was COVID. So there wasn't a lot we could do, but we could send care packages, right? So that's what we started doing. We started sending care packages to kids that were navigating an emotionally tough time. So if their parents were sick, or maybe if they just moved, or whatever the case may be. So people were able to nominate kids for what we called a brave bag. And in this brave bag, they would get all kinds of little things, notebooks, toys, board games, just all kinds of little things to remind them that they were loved and they were thought of, and elicit that feeling that Micah had when he got his gift in the mail. So that's what Micah Gives serves as. And Micah Gives is still there. We say that Transplant Teenz is a program of Micah Gives.
It's like the main focus of it more than anything. People are starting to think that it's like another brand.
Right. But sometimes we use Micah Gives more locally. So if there's schools about to be out, so sometimes what Micah Gives will do is we'll go and get some donations from the local store, as far as like popsicles or something like that, or just cases of water. So as it gets warmer out and the kids are walking home from school, we'll just stand out there and hand out bottles of water or popsicles or candy or something like that, just to remind them that we know that they're there and we're here to support them. So we'll do little local things like that, but we don't do as much mailing out as we used to.
So, Dr. Clayborne, in our discussion, you really explained how your health experience shaped your career path and where you were going. So what kind of support do you provide to people that are in the same situation you were and they need that emotional support?
I do what we call IMPAkT sessions. And IMPAkT sessions are essentially 30-minute sessions. I do them for free. And what we do is IMPAkT is an acronym, and it stands for Intentional Moments of Purpose, Authenticity, Knowledge, and Transformation. And that's what we do. We find those moments. So if you were navigating your journey, Santiago, and you said, I'm just done, I'm just over it, today's one of those days, right? We would stop and we would be very intentionally in the moment. And we would say, okay, let's talk about these 4 things. Let's talk about purpose. Let's talk about authenticity. Let's talk about knowledge. And let's talk about how this part of your journey is going to transform you. And we would walk through those things in a way that's helpful for you. But what I've basically studied is I specialized in grief therapy. And then I took cognitive behavioral therapy and combined them, because throughout the course of just studying people, what I've learned is when a person goes through a critical illness, they essentially go through the grief cycle. They go through denial, they go through anger, they go through bargaining, they go through depression, and then they go through acceptance of the thing. They repeat that cycle several times, especially cancer patients or people that have to have multiple treatment. They tend to go through that cycle. So my job is to interrupt that cycle with purpose. So if I can step in, number one, teach them about the cycle and why they're going through it, and then say, okay, we're going to go through the cycle. It's healthy to go through the cycle. But I also need you to add some purpose in this process. I also use something that's called psychosynthetic psychology. So psychosynthetic psychologists believe that when something happens to us, an illness or just any traumatic event per se, there is a fracture within the synthesis of the human. So the human is made up of 3 parts: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And when something happens, those 3 parts kind of scatter. So psychosynthesis brings them back into synthesis and into collaboration so that the whole human can grow together. So the way that I explain that is, think of a tripod. If you think of a tripod, it has 3 different legs. Some people may say, oh, I have heart failure, I have cancer, so I'm going to go really hard in the physical space to beat this. So that's extending that leg, that physical leg, all the way out. The mental and the spiritual, they're doing a little bit, but definitely not as much as they're doing on the physical side. So then you try to put that tripod down and it falls over. And the same thing with any of the other legs. Even if you do 2 of the legs, it's still going to be lopsided.
Exactly.
So what psychosynthesis says is we come in the middle of them trying to balance all those different things. We bring them all the way back down and figure out, okay, at your very base, who are you physically? Who are you mentally? Who are you spiritually? And then we help to evolve each part of you together.
That makes so much sense.
And that's essentially what we do. I don't see my clients in a traditional way. I tell them my job is to hand you tools and hand you support and then let you go, because the way that we synthesize should help you continue to grow.
Yeah.
And the synthesization has nothing to do with me. I'm just handing you tools and giving you the guidebook. But in reality, you are doing the work. And we have a great time. It's actually a lot of fun.
You have to choose to use the tools that you've been given in the correct way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And some people just don't know how to access those parts of themselves. One of the first things we do in an IMPAkT session is, so I would say, Santiago, I need to know before we even start, before we can embark on this journey, do you have hope?
Yeah.
If you say, yeah, I've got hope, I am going to say, I need you to create a me code for hope. So I created these things called me codes, because hope, I know what it is, and Honey knows what it is, and Santiago knows what it is, but I guarantee you we won't define it the same way. So what a me code is, it's my definition. It stands for mentality and evolution. So what is my current thought about hope or love or trust or whatever code we're defining? And then what is my evolutionary code of that? So for me, I can tell you that my me code for hope is vulnerability plus patience multiplied by humanity. So I am vulnerable enough to tell you what I need. Plus I'm patient with the process, and I trust that humanity will come together and deliver that thing. So when I say, I hope this happens, I am trusting my vulnerability, my patience, and humanity. But your hope equation, your me code for hope is going to be completely different. And Santiago, yours is going to be completely different from Honey's.
I know one thing that I relied on was humor to get me through. I was always joking with the doctors and building that relationship so that they understood I trusted them.
I told my doctors that I've assigned my hospital bill to you. So if you don't keep me alive, you're going to pay it. But yeah, so that's what I do. I make sure, and nobody has the same IMPAkT session because nobody has the same journey. But essentially, that is what I do. What I'm hyper focused on right now is navigating and building the curriculum for Transplant Teenz. So we as humans, we really focus on and praise intelligence. We say all the time, oh, he's so smart. He's going to do great in life because he's so smart. He's so intelligent. Charles Darwin said, the measure of success is not intelligence, but adaptability. So that's one part. The other part is this. Most of these kids that navigate transplant at a young age, they do great until they have to transition into adulthood and care for themselves because they've been cared for however long. Their parents have been doing it, hand feeding them pills, setting up their appointments, so on and so forth. So then remember transitioning into college? Imagine trying to transition into college and manage your health. It wouldn't have worked. So
I'm going to say, I would not make it.
No, you're going to do great. So usually the ball gets dropped and we see a lot of rejection during that time because they're not taking care of themselves. We didn't take care of ourselves in college, guys. Come on. Santiago, pause.
No, you are absolutely right.
So what we do with the Transplant Teenz curriculum, the way that it's different is we don't focus on the IQ of the teen. So what we do is we groom their C of superpowers, SEA. So instead of teaching them or focusing on IQ, we focus on SQ, their social quotient. We focus on EQ, their emotional quotient. And we focus on AQ, their adaptability quotient. We feel like if we can make them socially, emotionally, adaptively sound, then they will have a better transition into launching into adulthood and a smoother transition taking over their care long term.
Rather than them just crashing.
Right. So some of the things we go through in Transplant Teenz University is we teach them how to read a healthcare plan. Hey, you have a cold. Is this an urgent care situation or do you need to go to the emergency room? We have what we call the Transplant Teenz healthcare plan where they look at this paper, which is set up like a healthcare plan. And they say, man, if I go to the emergency room, it's $200. But if I go to the urgent care, it's $20. I think I'm going to go to the urgent care. And those are things we had to learn as adults, just shuffling through, what is it? A PPO versus what? They're learning these things now so that they're not trying to learn these things and become young adults on their own and manage their health.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Given your personal experiences with the heart transplants, what message would you like to share with those considering becoming donors?
My initial thought is to say there's no consideration on whether or not I should save a life. I think it's one of those decisions, like, if we actually asked that question and didn't have time to think about it, everybody would answer yes. It's like seeing someone drowning or seeing someone in trouble without thinking. The humanity in you says, yes, save that person. We sit around and we've thought about it for so long and we mull it over for so long that we've come up with a million reasons to say no. But what does your humanity tell you to say? What is just that natural, inborn, innate part of you ask you to do when you are asked, would you save a life?
Yeah, that instinct,
That's right. Do that, because we have survived as a race. We have survived as humanity on instinct. It's when we start overthinking it. It's when we start making reasons that we shouldn't and going against our instinct that we don't do.
I love that.
Yeah, that's really good.
So what would you say to someone that is considering being an organ donor? Tell me why I should sign up to be an organ donor.
Number one, you're saving a whole family full of grief. Two, that family will honor you since you gave up your own life just for purpose, their own cause.
So you're talking about the legacy part of becoming a donor, like the legacy that you create because you are allowing your life to continue through other people.
Yeah, like Gary.
Like Gary's my donor. So he's talking about my donor. Yes, you're absolutely right. The legacy piece of it is really important. That's a good point. I didn't bring that up. But you're right. You're so good. Who is your mom?
All right.
Do y'all know who my mom is?
Oh, she sounds like a wonderful, intelligent, and a delightful woman. So here's my next question. There's so many, like you were talking a bit ago about misconceptions about organ donations that can go through your mind. And I think that it's even harder when you have to make that choice about your child. Micah, what would you tell someone that was considering something happened to their child? What would you tell them about donating their organs to save another child's life?
What would you say to the parent? You being a kid.
I know this is hard for you to process and all with your child dying, but you could save a whole nother generation of people by just giving their organs, and your son's tragic fate could make everyone else's fate bright, and they would carry on his legacy along with them as they continue to live.
That was great.
I love the legacy part. That's such a strong statement to make. I love that. I said love like 50 million times in this episode.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else either of you would like to share with the listeners? Maybe you have an upcoming event, any advice, tips, anything that either of you would like to share?
Please send folks our way. Transplant Teenz is for any student that is in 7th through 12th grade navigating the transplant experience. So whether they are pre or post-transplant, or even if a household member is pre or post-transplant. So they may have a sibling that has a transplant or a parent that has a transplant or is waiting for a transplant. We support them as well because they understand some of the boundaries and some of the things that have to happen that are different. It changes how the world works when you're in the household with someone with a transplant. Everybody can't come over during flu season. You can't go everywhere during flu season, or you can't have the big birthday parties anymore. It just changes the world. So we support any teen that's navigating the transplant experience for themselves or with a household member. So please, the program is free. It's nationwide virtual support. There are no in-person meetings. Everything's virtual. We have an app, and it almost works just like social media. We have all different squads and stuff they can join. There's the Athletic Alliance, the Foodie Fighters, there's the Book Battalion, there's the Binge Brigade. They are having fun. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But most of all, they are supporting each other as they navigate this very unique experience and demystifying a lot of the myths that go with it, as well as alleviating the loneliness that comes with it.
How many kids are in there?
Micah's goal for the year is 100. We have 35 in about, I want to say 20 states and 3 countries.
Wow.
We got Canada, we got the U.S.
Canada, U.S., and the U.K. right now.
Okay.
We have an awesome kid in Alaska that joins us.
Cute.
So I didn't even know people really lived in Alaska. So when he joined, I was like, this is amazing. So yeah, really,
it takes somebody special to live in the cold like that.
It takes a whole lot of special to live in the cold like that. But yeah, honestly, just know that we're here to support in any way, whether it's critical illness impact session or whether it's through Transplant Teenz. We are absolutely here to offer our support and expertise in any way that we can to make everybody else's journey easier. we are hoping to forge a path so that other people can see that there is a way through and don't get lost too much in the weeds. We want them to look at the path that they're on and say, okay, somebody's been here. They did it and I can do it too.
It's inspiring.
Very.
I'm just sitting here like thinking, holy smokes, what have I done with my life?
I know, right?
So could you please share with us what's the best way for them to connect with you and how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. Social media is always best.
I have a TikTok account that has like over 100,000 followers. People always are on there because kind of the new social media type thing now.
Yeah, so our social media handles are great as far as Transplant Teenz. All of the social media platforms, it's at Transplant TZ. So we spell teens with a Z, T-E-N-Z. So it's at Transplant TZ. And for me, it's at Dr. Brittany Speaks, SPEAKS. So those are the ways that they can contact us. Our websites are brittnyspeaks.com or transplanttz.com.
Wow.
That's cool.
It is.
So thank you both again for joining us today. It's been great. Amazing.
Yes, it has.
Thank you so much for reaching out to us and making some time for us to share our story with you. It's been a pleasure.
So as we reflect on today's conversation, let's return to the essential question. How can the gift of organ donation transform lives? And what can we do to support transplant recipients and their families?
Yeah, and there's so many ways that we learned today. So that's a great thing. So for our listeners, thank you for joining us today. We hope that today's conversation has inspired you to explore the next step in your planning process and consider signing up for an organ donor. It's really easy to do. So, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, share this episode with someone else that you think might be inspired to be helpful in their life.
Do it.
Do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Micah said do it.
All right. Until next time, remember, every chapter you write today shapes your legacy tomorrow. Thank you for joining us at Thoughtful Planning. And just like the vibrant hues of a setting sun, we're wrapping up another episode of Thoughtful Planning. Every shared story and insight is a step closer to turning uncertainty into celebrations of preparedness.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, remember that every surprise that comes our way is an opportunity to grow, adapt, and learn. Stay tuned for more stories, expert insight, and of course, a touch of wit in our next episode.
We're not just co-hosts, we're fellow travelers on this journey. For more information on additional resources, which will help you take the next step in planning, look for the link in the show notes for our membership. Join us next time for another episode of Thoughtful Planning. Until then, keep living, laughing, and loving every moment.